Wow, what a moment. The future of Starship is no longer just a concept. It's finally blasting off. A historic milestone has just been achieved as SpaceX's proposal for the Starbase launch site has officially received the green light. This isn't just a small win, this changes everything. It means no more delays for investigations, no more operational uncertainty, and most importantly, a clear path for frequent Starship launches. It's a monumental leap toward the future, and it signals that SpaceX is not slowing down. With this approval in place, the company now has the momentum to move full steam ahead. But that's not all that's been stirring in the space world. While the Starship program celebrates progress, there's a heated debate happening around NASA's proposed budget cuts by the White House. These cuts could have serious implications for space exploration. Meanwhile, in low Earth orbit, the International Space Station just had to perform an emergency maneuver to dodge dangerous debris from a Chinese satellite. All of these developments highlight how rapidly the landscape of space operations is evolving, and how critical it is to navigate it carefully. Today's episode will unpack all of this, starting with the explosive progress of Starship. SpaceX's Starship is now in one of its most intense and transformative stages of development. The company is marking major milestones that are shaping not just its future, but potentially the entire future of space travel. And leading this charge is the groundbreaking approval to increase launch frequency at Starbase. This dedicated launch site in Boca Chica, Texas, has now been cleared for up to 25 Starship launches per year. That's a huge shift in scale, and it sets the stage for SpaceX to launch every 2 weeks if needed. It's an ambitious leap toward routine spaceflight. This approval didn't happen overnight. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, had been reviewing the proposal since late last year. As part of that process, they gathered public feedback and conducted detailed environmental impact evaluations. Every angle was considered, from noise pollution to wildlife effects. And now, after months of deliberation, the FAA has released its final environmental assessment. The result? Full authorization for an increased flight cadence. According to the FAA's published statement, the modifications to SpaceX's operator license would not cause significant environmental harm under NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. That's the official green light SpaceX needed. This FAA determination is more than just paperwork. It's a game-changing decision that removes several critical roadblocks for SpaceX. In the past, development was frequently held back due to mandated investigations and repeated environmental reviews after each test or mishap. That red tape is now gone, at least for the next 5 years. As long as incidents fall within the scope of the newly approved operational plans, SpaceX won't be forced to pause activities or undergo a new environmental review every time. This is huge. It finally gives the company breathing room to push forward without constantly looking over its shoulder. What this means for development speed is nothing short of revolutionary. With the freedom to launch up to 25 times per year, SpaceX can dramatically accelerate Starship testing and refinement. That includes validating performance across launches, re-entries, landings, and more complex orbital maneuvers. Every launch becomes an opportunity to collect critical data, fix design issues, and iterate improvements faster. It's a move from sporadic launches to rapid prototyping at scale. And when your goal is to reach the Moon, Mars, and beyond, that kind of iteration speed is absolutely essential. We're watching the transition from development to deployment in real time. Another key advantage is predictability. In aerospace, planning is everything. With this new regulatory clarity, SpaceX can now schedule a stable timeline of missions without constantly shifting gears. That makes it easier to coordinate with partners, suppliers, and even future customers, from commercial satellite operators to government agencies. Everyone benefits when the roadmap is stable. And let's not forget the broader implications. This sets a precedent. It shows how regulatory agencies and private space companies can work together to balance safety, environmental protection, and innovation. It's a model that other programs may now follow in future expansions. The FAA's assessment didn't just focus on flight numbers. It also addressed SpaceX's infrastructure development, which is critical for supporting a higher launch cadence. One of the standout elements in the approval is the inclusion of Pad B. This is the next-generation Starship launch mount, meant to work alongside, or even eventually replace, Pad A. Pad B is a serious upgrade. It includes a flame trench, which helps redirect heat and energy during liftoff, and a brand new launch mount called OM2. These systems are engineered to handle the intense demands of more frequent, heavier launches. Construction on Pad B is already far along. The flame trench and associated support structures have been fully installed. Meanwhile, the OM-2 launch mount is in its final stages of production and assembly. Once operational, this system will enable Starship to launch at a far higher frequency while improving safety and sustainability. It also provides critical redundancy. If Pad A goes offline for maintenance or upgrades, Pad B can step in. That kind of flexibility is vital when you're aiming for a launch every 2 weeks. It minimizes downtime and keeps the development engine running at full speed. There's another major development buried in the FAA's documents: confirmation that SpaceX is advancing to its next version of Starship, the V3 model. This isn't just a minor tweak. The V3 Starship represents a massive upgrade over earlier designs. For starters, the ship will increase in length from 50 meters to 70 meters. It will also see a boost in engine count from 6 to 9, significantly increasing thrust. And speaking of power, the total propellant capacity will rise from 1,500 to a massive 2,650 tons. This jump allows the new Starship to generate nearly 29 mN of thrust, up from 12 mN before. These changes make the V3 Starship the most powerful version yet, and that's just the upper stage. The Super Heavy booster is also getting a serious overhaul. It will now stretch 80 meters in length, up from 71, and be outfitted with 35 engines. Its fuel capacity jumps to 4,100 tons, and it will produce over 103 mN of thrust. While the diameter stays the same, the combined system will now stand 150 meters tall, making it the tallest and most powerful rocket ever constructed. This aligns with details SpaceX and Elon Musk have been teasing in public statements and technical briefings. Design upgrades are also part of this transformation. The V3 Starship will include newly designed grid fins, improved flaps for better control, enhanced thermal shielding for re-entry, and a more robust hot staging system. All of these components aim to increase performance, survivability, and reusability. SpaceX is already building toward this future. Ship 39 is expected to be the first full V3 vehicle, and sightings of the first V3 booster components have already been reported at the Starbase factory. The transition is clearly underway, and it's happening faster than most expected. And hey, before we dive deeper into this critical topic, take a second to like this video and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss out on a single moment of SpaceX's extraordinary journey, or the wider developments shaking the space industry right now. Because next, we need to talk about something serious. A growing storm is forming around the proposed NASA budget cuts for 2026, and it's already causing major waves across the space community, within the US government, and among industry leaders who see this as more than just a funding issue. It's a battle for the future of space exploration. In case you missed it in our last episode, let's catch you up. The White House recently released what's called a skinny budget, a preliminary federal spending plan that acts as a starting point for deeper fiscal discussions. Shockingly, this early outline includes a proposal to cut NASA's budget by nearly 25%. That's a reduction of about $6 billion. If passed, NASA's funding would drop from $24.9 billion in 2025 to just $18.8 billion in 2026. That's not just trimming fat, that's slicing into the heart of America's space program, and it's sending shockwaves throughout the space ecosystem. What's catching even more attention is not just the size of the cut, but where exactly the axe would fall. The proposal isn't across the board, it selectively targets certain missions. High-profile programs like the Mars Sample Return Mission, the Lunar Gateway, the Space Launch System, SLS, and the Orion crew vehicle are among those facing either deep cuts or outright cancellation. While some critics argue these programs are inefficient or bloated in cost, others point out that cutting them now could waste decades of investment and seriously stall US ambitions in deep space exploration. Interestingly, the reaction hasn't been entirely one-sided. There's a split in opinion. On one hand, some experts have supported scaling back these large-scale missions, citing persistent delays, ballooning budgets, and limited results. On the other hand, there's widespread outrage over proposed cuts to programs like the Roman Space Telescope, which is expected to make groundbreaking discoveries, and reductions in International Space Station operations, both seen as critical to scientific research and international cooperation. These proposed cuts are being viewed not just as a setback but as a threat to America's space leadership. Representative Grace Meng, a top member of the House Appropriations Committee's Commerce, Justice, and Science Subcommittee, didn't waste any time issuing a sharp response. In an official statement, she called the proposed cuts shocking and the largest in American history. Later on social media, she posted, They will decimate NASA's research and education efforts and terminate funding for our nation's dedicated scientists. Her concern wasn't just about money, it was about the values behind those dollars. Innovation, education, and long-term vision. Senator Chris Van Hollen, another high-ranking lawmaker and member of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee, added his voice to the chorus of criticism. On X, formerly Twitter, he wrote, "We would never have gotten to the moon or be talking about Mars without NASA's science mission and should not let Trump-Musk jeopardize America's future leadership." His comments reflect a deeper worry that political maneuvering and short-term cost-cutting could jeopardize decades of scientific achievement and weaken America's strategic edge in space. Representative George Whitesides, vice-ranking member of the House Science Committee and a former NASA chief of staff, also stepped into the debate with strong words. No spin will change the fact that this will end critical missions, dramatically scale back the workforce, and risk our leadership in science around the globe. It is completely irresponsible and I will fight it every way I can, he said. Whitesides brings a unique perspective, having worked in both government and the private space sector, and his warning reflects real fears about job losses and the erosion of U.S. dominance in aerospace. But it's not just lawmakers sounding the alarm. Leading space advocacy groups and private industry coalitions are also raising red flags. The Planetary Society, the Coalition for Deep Space Exploration, which includes aerospace giants like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman, and the Commercial Spaceflight Federation, where SpaceX is a member, have all voiced serious concerns about the proposed budget. These organizations represent not just corporate interests but decades of engineering, science, and policy collaboration that have kept the U.S. at the forefront of space exploration. The Coalition for Deep Space Exploration issued one of the strongest statements yet, calling the budget plan deeply concerning. They warned that the proposed reductions could cripple the U.S.'s scientific capabilities and threaten the goal of a sustained human presence on the moon. They emphasized that pulling back now would leave an open door for China, which has been aggressively pushing forward with its lunar ambitions. China's plans for a manned moon landing by the end of the decade are already well underway, and losing momentum now could cost the U.S. its edge on the lunar frontier. Meanwhile, the Commercial Spaceflight Federation offered a slightly more diplomatic tone but didn't downplay the seriousness of the issue. In their statement, they noted that cuts to NASA's space and Earth science initiatives, space technology development, and the International Space Station's operations would have significant negative consequences for the U.S.'s global space leadership and the growing commercial space economy. These sectors are not just about exploration, they're about jobs, technological innovation, and maintaining a competitive advantage on the global stage. So, where does all of this leave us? While it's true that every budget proposal invites debate, this one has triggered a unique blend of bipartisan concern and industry alarm. Yes, cost saving is important. But the scale and focus of these cuts, especially when they threaten scientific discovery, technological advancement, and international collaboration, have many worried that the U.S. could be walking away from the very projects that define its leadership in space. With global competition heating up, these choices matter more than ever, and Congress is sure to give them intense scrutiny before anything becomes final. We'd love to hear your take on this. Do you think these cuts are justified or reckless? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, especially when the future of space exploration is on the line. Now, shifting gears for a moment, let's talk about a recent incident aboard the International Space Station. One that highlights just how fragile and dangerous operating in Earth's orbit can be, especially in an era of increasing space debris. On April 30th, the ISS completed a critical maneuver to avoid a potentially catastrophic collision with space debris. The threat came from a fragment of a Chinese Long March rocket, originally launched way back in 2005. This aging debris was on a collision course with the station. In response, NASA and the Russian space agency Roscosmos coordinated a carefully planned debris avoidance maneuver, one that involved firing the thrusters on a docked spacecraft known as Progress 91, which is attached to the Russian Zvezda service module. At precisely 6:10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, or 10:10 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, the Progress 91 thrusters were activated and fired continuously for 3 minutes and 33 seconds. The purpose was to gently adjust the ISS's orbit, raising it just enough to move safely out of the way of the incoming debris. According to NASA's projections, without this maneuver, the fragment would have passed within only 4 miles, or about 64 kilometers, of the ISS. In space terms, that's terrifyingly close. The room for error is razor thin when you're moving at over 17,000 miles per hour. Events like this are becoming alarmingly common, and they highlight a growing concern in the space community. Earth's orbit is getting crowded. Old rocket stages, dead satellites, and exploded fragments now number in the tens of thousands. And every one of them poses a risk to functioning spacecraft and astronauts. While collision avoidance maneuvers have become routine for the ISS, the frequency of these events is increasing. That trend raises difficult questions about the sustainability of our current practices in low Earth orbit. As humanity continues to expand its presence in space, we have to start thinking seriously about how we manage orbital debris. Will governments step up to establish new international regulations? Will private companies develop breakthrough technologies for active debris removal? So far, progress has been slow, but incidents like this prove that the problem can't be ignored. We're reaching a tipping point, and what happens next will determine how safely we can operate in space in the decades to come. Thanks for sticking with us, and as always, stay tuned for more updates on how NASA, SpaceX, and other global players are tackling these critical challenges in space exploration. And don't forget, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. This has been Kevin from Great SpaceX, and until next time, keep your curiosity alive, your imagination open, and your eyes always looking up.